Virginia Woolf said, "A girl needs a room of her own to create." I have several rooms of my own, and it's not creating. I don't know what's going on. Welcome to Idil Films. I'm Idil. I've got about 10 minutes to make this video before one of my cat sons walks into, well, he's not going to walk in. He's going to try to bang the bathroom door and he's going to be like, "Let me in. How dare you close a door in my apartment?" Let's get into it. Some of you have your own accounts. Some of you create content online, whether it's on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube. Some of you are from very insular, conservative, traditional, extremely religious communities. Some of you have gone no contact with your families. Like, it doesn't make sense to want to be visible when you're doing the work as an adult in not only healing from our traumatic childhoods, but at the same time, trying to seek some sort of reprieve and freedom and space from our childhood abusers, which in my case were not only my origin family, my nuclear family and family system, but, to a certain extent, my community, right? And that's a weird relationship because I also have a very loving relationship with my community where some of my most close relationships are members from the Somali community, from my community. I spent many years living and working in Somalia. I have this weird affinity and obsession and need to be in close proximity with my community, but at the same time have this kind of emotional, spiritual distance. So nothing new, right? Just part of being a human. And take Somali and put in, I don't know who's watching this, but I'm assuming Ethiopian, Syrian, I don't know. Whoever's watching this, I'm sure you're navigating your own journey with visibility and being public online in your own ways. But so I've been thinking about what is the cost? Obviously, there's an internal cost to doing this of again, negotiating your sense of peace and, the risk of being misinterpreted or read in a wrong way or having people project onto you, not translating yourself in a way that feels authentic. And, that's a risk that I'm currently struggling with. I was like, oh, I really want to do a series and I want to talk about it from several angles. So I'm going to start today to talk about what being online has done to my relationship with my own individuation, which is just the act of having some sort of internal coherence, what we call authenticity, right? Even though I still struggle with the concept of an authentic self, there is I believe, a playful, an organic emergence of some sort of self that we get if we had access to healthy caregivers and, healthy attachment and supportive, not only family, but a larger community, as well as supportive external environment where the people who are raising us are not, in a knife fight, right? Life in the big city, in a knife fight to survive. So I think in that context, there is a very, very interesting, innate, organic, playful sense of self. It's very hard. That organic, playful self that I'm speaking about, it's very hard for that individual to emerge under the surveillance of a very conservative and collectivist culture and very abusive culture and a very abusive family system, right? You start to conform and there's a lot of lateral surveillance, a lot of policing each other, cousins policing each other, even friends. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about my relationship to the digital space of creation, right? So I've been online forever, like most millennials, but one of my first experiences venturing into making content for my community, which is the Somali community, was I wrote an article when I was in university. It's up here. It's really cringe, very navel-gazy. God, I love that girl and I love millennials. We were so earnest and so hopeful. But at the same time, there is this other darker side, and I can't believe I took nearly, I don't even know how long this video is. There is this darker side of being surveillanced, of being witnessed, sometimes by people who are just watching silently, hovering like a drone. That surveillance does exist. I see it. I see it in my algorithm. I see the shares. I see, the people searching my name. And, it is very disconcerting. It's a little bit like, oh my God. And sometimes, but then I remind myself in my experience creating online for a very long time in different platforms and blogging, that a lot of that is silent support, because there's people that I observe online that I'm scared of engaging, and not in some creepy way where either I feel like they may not want me to engage with them and they may not resonate with me because of my politics and whatnot. And these are just assumptions we're making about strangers. But also, sometimes I'm just like, maybe they're not interested in having that much people watch them. So I try to support silently. So I like to think, hey, a lot of these people watching are trying to ingest my very heavy content. I mean, come on, I'm talking about a lot of really heavy stuff here. And I'm not the only one. There's a lot of us doing this, but it's difficult work, right? Asking people to come to terms with the truth of their family systems, of the abuse they experience as children in a culture where family, the father, the mother are sacred demigods, I would say, that one cannot transgress against, never mind slander publicly with your face. So, and then asking people to do that against their own families and hold very, very difficult truths about the people that hurt them is a very, very messy process. So I'm asking people to do very difficult things, and I'm a stranger and I have not earned that right. There has to be some sort of trust earned. And so I like to think that a lot of what I make online and a lot of the work that we create is being consumed in a good faith way, in a way that, with the attention and presence and contemplation it deserves. Because that's the way I create my content. It's really, really mindful. This sounds very disjointed, but I'm sharing everything I am from a really heart-centered space. So with that said, there are vicious people who do consume my content, who make fun of me, who seek to harm me, who seek to misunderstand me, mistranslate me, misinterpret your content, derail your message, be unkind. Part of the risk that we take creating online. I always rejected this idea when people say, well, it's the internet. And here comes the point, the world's longest roundabout point is because I'm deeply terrified of being consumed in a bad faith way. And now that I see more of members of my community observing me, I have found myself dialing down my content on childhood trauma, on the unconscious, on spirituality. I had this whole series of talking about how to do shadow work, like really, really terrifying shadow work. I'm talking really dealing with archetypes and sleep paralysis and spiritual psychosis. And I am afraid that it's just going to be in vain. I don't like creating content or creating anything without a really mindful survey, thought, forecasting of who it is for. And that's not to say that I create with only, sometimes you just got to create, whoever watches, whoever resonates. You can't control that process. I'm not talking about that, but what I'm saying is when we create digital media, when we're being seen online, we all have an image of what the audience is, what their political preferences are. There's some sort of rough idea of who you're trying to communicate with, right? Out into this digital ether. And I found it for me in being one of the costs of being seen online is of being seen, creating and existing online is it's hard to create authentically because there's already this knowing that, well, I'm trying to have this really nuanced discussion about sleep paralysis, right? From a non-religious perspective, from an atheist perspective, but I'm risking, and I know the majority of people who will see this just by nature of the algorithm are people who are not the community that I described, or the community that I think is interested in this type of discussion or can handle this type of discussion, it's likely going to be seen by people who literally think their abusive families are the bee's knees, right? Like, can you just imagine thinking your mom and dad are the greatest thing since sliced bread, and then you see a video by this hot ass woman, this gorgeous, okay, I mean, just look at me. This woman who's talking about demons, right? And archetypes. And you're like, what in the Lucifer Morning Star cult of Baal hell is this? This is it. Like, so I can predict that, or maybe I'm projecting that, or I don't know if I'm manifesting that, but that's a thing that disrupts me because I feel like I can't create, if it's going to feel like it's going to be a waste of time. And one thing about me, and this is actually not a trauma response, this is literally intrinsic and essential to who I am. I don't like being a spectacle. I don't enjoy watching a spectacle. That is different from being subversive and watching subversive people and subversive content. Spectacle is different, okay? And sometimes you need a little bit of a spectacle. That's just not my calling. That's not my ministry, not my circus, not my monkey. None of it. So I'm super sensitive to that. When I was making TikToks, like, I got emotional, dude. I would be crying. I would watch other content creators, some of them from my community, right, that also make equally vulnerable content. Vulnerability was a big thing. I love millennials. My God, guys. Us and vulnerability, we go together. In my language, we call it far'i faranti, which means finger and ring. Okay, millennials and vulnerability, that's our thing. Did I just rhyme? I did. I'm seeing people sort of not want this, and I'm sort of seeing this very like, get it together. Get it together. You're just looking for attention. Look at you crying on the internet. Get it together. So that's how people sound to me when they try to stop other people from emerging and existing authentically, because because you know what's happening? They think they're doing a thing when they stop somebody from being authentic and mourning online and expressing, and they're like, you are on the internet seeking validation. Get it together. That's how it's like, because it's a performance to me. That's why I'm saying it this way, because the person projecting on that very brave human being who's expressing very brave and honest and real feelings, everything is a performance. Life is a performance. None of this is real. We're on a moving rock. All of it is a performance. Some of it is a very painful performance, and other people are violent with their performance and they hurt others. But it's a bit of a show and we're figuring it out. But when I see somebody try to at least authentically, organically perform and express and mourn with us and share and put that out into the digital ether, and somebody comes up and they're like, what are you doing? You're embarrassing your family. You should heal. I'm like, dude, you're so congested. You need to emotionally sneeze, man. Oh God, you're so tight. You think you're together, but you're so tight, and I know it because I do it. I've done so much healing, and I still do it. I still have in me this need to be consumed and seen as a credible, as a cogent, as a thoughtful, as a measured, as a well put together adult, And luckily for me, I'm a feeling Scorpio with a Scorpio rising and Scorpio sun and Capricorn moon. And my burden to carry on this planet is I can smell it on you when you do it. When you're being disingenuous and you try to stop somebody else from being authentic and making mistakes and, saying, I'm done, I'm putting the mask away, and I'm done playing the part, and I've been bruised for playing the part. I've done the thing all my life. I've done everything they've asked me to do. I've played the role, and it hurts, man. And I've experienced nothing but suffering and punishment, and I'm gonna scream loud digitally into the ether, hoping somebody hears me, hoping that there's an empathetic witness out there. And we all come running and we grovel at their feet and we knees to the ground and we emerge in front of them and say, sister, brother, sibling, I hear you. Thank you for joining us on this side of the fence, on the journey and the road towards liberation. Thank you. But no matter how many of us are there holding their hand, trying to be an empathetic witness, you can't drown out the ones behind the fence on the other side that are throwing rocks, that are being vicious, that are being degrading, that are being cruel, that are being reductive, that are being insincere and dishonest, and are trying to disrupt what is organically happening. There's a book that I'm actually going to make a longer video on is here, Mass Psychology of Fascism by Wilhelm Reich. I think I said that. He talks about how repression, he talks a lot about sexual repression, but repression in the family system leads to fascism. And there's a line, I'm going to paraphrase it, how reactionary responses to suffering or the performance of suffering of a victim expressing anger, right, can be co-opted by reactionary forces without meaningful analysis of the root cause. So what does that mean? That means that when a doctor, a really good doctor, doesn't just respond to the symptoms, understands that the work of getting to the root of the disease needs to be done carefully. The sufferer, the person struck with the affliction, the condition, the pain, the disease, needs to be able to seek help. And they're not going to do it in ways that always make sense to us. And sometimes seeking help is being visible, it's being seen. People are going to seek community and help and solidarity and empathetic witnesses in ways that do not resonate with us, that may trigger us, that may trigger our shame. Sometimes when you see somebody in distress, I used to do this when I was younger. I know I certainly did this to my siblings, where I would see, to me, they were metaphorically uncovered when they would react and engage in help-seeking behavior, that I was reading as a spectacle. And I knew the pain was there, and I would try to, and I thought my intervention was a form of covering them, concealing them from these really unempathetic and unkind and judgmental eyes. But I didn't know that I was doing the same thing by disrupting their mourning, their cry. So, girl, what are you even talking about? What I'm talking about is take a risk being seen online, whether it's to hear your own voice, whether it's a creative process for something more beautiful like a novel or a film or a book or a big canvas or your PhD or how you're going to raise your beautiful child or the garden you're working on or the community project you're working on. The moral of the story is risk being seen. Beautiful things can happen. Until next time.